Hi, this is Caleb Owens with the Insurance Experience, and today I'm with Caleb Parks with Trident Roofing. Hey,
Yeah,
Caleb, how are you doing today?
doing pretty good, man. How often do you get somebody with the same name on?
This is my first time. I'm really impressed. It's like talking to myself here.
Yeah, I find
Luckily, we spell our name a little bit different, but
yeah, I find our names kind of unique. I don't meet many Calebs out there.
same. I've been, I would say, around the world. At this point, and Caleb is a very rare name. It's very rare to actually meet a Caleb or work with a Caleb of any kind. So, yeah, this is a unique event.
Well, thanks for having me on today.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Thank you for coming on. And so, yeah, if you don't mind, tell me about yourself. Kind of tell me how you got started, how you became a founder of this company, and kind of where all this came from.
It's actually a really interesting story. I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. It's just something. My dad was an entrepreneur when I was growing up, so I kind of always knew this was a direction I wanted to go. But also, in the same hand, with my dad being an entrepreneur, wanted to push me into college, so I tried the standard route a little while.
Sure.
After going one semester and paying for that one semester, because I'm the oldest of like a clan of children. I think I have 8 siblings off the top of my head. So there's not much college help there. So I pay for that one semester. I'm like, there's no way I can sit down and do this day after day after day. And so I start looking at the professional world and I go, well, I would like the opportunity to make 6 figures. I don't want to go to college. And it looked like there was only one route for me in that, and that was to figure out sales. So I tried selling makeup first. I'm a 6'3", 230-pound dude.
Wow.
To put in perspective, that's not an easy product for a guy like me to sell.
Hey, but you tried it. Hats off to you. That's impressive. If you can, that's kind of like selling ice to an Eskimo. That old saying. You did. If you could sell makeup to a girl being yourself, you did
Yeah,
it.
most of them be like, well, what do you think about it? I'm like, I don't wear it. This is just like, I know all the facts. And outside of that, I really don't know the practical application. But it was really small ticket. There wasn't the kind of money I wanted, but it was a really good opportunity to get my feet wet and
Wow.
get uncomfortable, because that was definitely not something I was
Yeah.
comfortable talking about. Eventually, I figured out that wasn't going to work. I tried the car sales route. I think every salesperson in the world tries that first. I could not do it. I just couldn't live with the product I was selling. That kind of put me in debt because I wasn't selling great. So I did construction, which is what led me to roofing eventually. So I'm doing construction, pouring concrete. It's like 110 degrees in August. And this is when I had the epiphany that I will do whatever it takes to never do this again, right?
That's good.
Yeah. So I'm sitting there going through this day, and that's when I made the commitment. I started reading. Following that August day, about 60 days later, I'd read like 4 different sales books, and I was ready to try my hat at sales again after the terrible cars experience. Took a
Wow.
bunch of interviews at a bunch of different places, a bunch of different trades, a bunch of different sales type of things, and I settled on roofing just because the flexibility that you have as a sales rep is very unique in this industry, depending on the company you work for. And then 2, it's very high ticket and high volume. So being able to sell these high ticket products and make a good living, that was really enticing to me, especially knowing that the way it was kind of pitched to me when I started was, you're going to work really, really hard for 6 months, like all day, as long as you can, from sun up to sundown. But the other 6 months of the year, you'll work 4 hours a day, just kind of closing out stuff that you got. And that was really
Wow.
enticing to me, because who wants to
Yeah.
work, all the time, 12 hours a day, all year round? So that was really nice to
Right.
me. So I went in my first year. I did about $750,000 in revenue for the company I was working for. Not a fantastic year, but pretty good for my first year.
Yeah.
Going into the following year of 2021, I did $750,000 in revenue in the first quarter. So I was promoted to be a
Wow.
branch manager or sales manager at that point. Started running a team in Austin for the company that I worked with. And by the end of the year, I was promoted to be the department head of sales. My teams did $8.4 million in revenue that year.
Wow.
Going into the next year, again, this for me is a great opportunity. I was 21 at the time. I was appreciative to get the opportunity to kind of just grow into these leadership roles. Being on the ground floor of a starting company really gave me that opportunity and gave me that mentorship from the owner. But after the end of 2022, I was just sitting there kind of like, hey, I think I've learned all I can learn in this role. It's time for me to look other places. And I took an opportunity to be a sales manager for a different roofing company, just to see how a different company operates. And I did that for about 6 months before I decided that the culture I was a part of was not a good culture for me, because I was more
Right.
in tune with the culture I came from, I guess. And
Sure.
every company is going to be different.
Yeah.
And so when I decided to part ways with them, I was looking at it and I was like, well, I can go be a sales rep or a sales manager for somebody else. I'm at the restart a book of business. I don't know if I want to roll the dice on a new culture. And I said, well, I've been doing this at a high level for the last 3 years. Why don't I just bet on me? And that's why we
Yeah.
started on that's how we started in Trident. It's founded, the reason we name it Trident is because we have like a 3-prong approach to our business. We want it to be good for the employees, because I've been in situations in the roofing industry where it wasn't the best for the roofing sales consultant or some of the employees in the company. So I wanted to change that in our industry. I want it to be good for the homeowner. A lot of contractors go out and they give one estimate. It's a one size fit all. My problem with that is the material you use, the warranties you give, and your just guarantees have a huge fluctuation on that price. So one of the things
Right. Sure.
to differentiate ourselves is we do your roof your way. We're going to find the system and that works best for your budget and your situation.
It's like Burger King. I like
ways,
it.
But the reason we do that is because, not everybody has a ton of money to put on this premium roof, and that's great. I do those as well. I also just want to help the people that need something that's going to like, we can put it on for 20 years. It's going to last that time. Sometimes it's a 3-tab option because that's the cheapest that we can do it, but it's going to solve them from having more interior problems in the future, right? So we try to cater to most of the marketplace. And
wow,
that means our sit down is typically longer than the average contractors. I don't go out, take a look at the roof, and then just give you an estimate and say, hey, call me if you're happy with it. We're going to sit down. I'm going to talk to you about your specific problems. What is your budget for this? We're going to talk about different types of upgrades to maybe help with ventilation if you're having electricity problems or high electric bills. We're going to sit down and talk about, okay, well, do you want to go the cheaper route with this kind of 20-year shingle or a 30-year shingle? Do you want something impact resistant? Are you considering maybe metal? We're going to talk about all of the options you have and fully answer that homeowner's questions as to what the pros and cons of each one are. And I'm really honest with my homeowners. For example, impact resistance shingles are a common upsell in our market, in our industry. I don't see a huge value in them unless you're in certain areas. I mean, yeah, you're going to get a premium discount in most cases from your insurance. But as you know, like, that's a double-edged sword for some people. They're going to lose some of the cosmetic endorsements and things like that. And I'm pretty open with people about that. I'm like, I'm not an insurance professional, but this is what I've been told. Like, you can get some premium discounts, but it comes, you're giving something up with that. And in our market, we either have 1-inch hail or we have 2.5-inch hail. There's really not very much in between. So
2.5 will destroy a roof, wouldn't it?
Exactly. It doesn't matter what kind of shingle you put on there. It doesn't matter if you have metal up there. Once we get to that big, it's destroying everything. So to me, well, do you want to spend the extra $3,000 to have an impact resistant roof that's probably also going to need to be replaced the next time a big storm comes through here? Or worse, your roof's 15 years old, 1.5-inch hailstorm comes through, it totals everything but your impact resistant roof. And now you have the 15-year-old roof, and you're not going to get any assistance from your insurance when that time comes around. It's going to be due to be replaced in the next 5 to 10 years. So we just make it really, the center point of when we meet with homeowners is just to answer questions, to make sure there's full clarity on what the pros and cons of every situation are.
Wow. So, I mean, you're really good at that. Clearly, you know what you're talking about, and you've got experience in that. But, one question I have for you would be like, how did you kind of tie the two sides together? Because there's two major elements with that. One would be selling it, and then another would be the actual roofing. Like, how did you go in partnership with someone else, or did you just started all this up yourself? Like, hired some guys that know what they're doing and put everything together?
I'm using, we subcontract all the work. Most of the people in my market subcontract out the work. Fortunately for me, I subcontract with the guys that I've been working with for the last 4 years. So we have a good understanding of what's expected from one another, especially since my procedures didn't change a whole lot from some of the previous companies I've worked with, just because if a company's doing things right, there's no reason for me to fix all that. I mean, I worked for amazing companies before deciding to start my own company. So I really had a good blueprint to kind of follow. And since we all use the same subs in the city, it's pretty easy to communicate intent and what we expect on our job sites.
Wow. Okay. All right. That explains a lot more of it. And I didn't know that. I was unaware that there's so much subbing going on in roofing. This is probably obvious to you, that happens quite a bit, where everyone subs everything out. And it makes a lot of sense too, because to have the skill sets that you have are radically different than the skill sets of actual, the roofers that are actually going up there and working, like you said, in 110-degree weather. that's really hot, and it's really a tough job, isn't it?
Yeah, my hat's off to those guys. I mean, all of my crew members, they have my respect. I simply could just say it as, I wouldn't do that. I couldn't do that. That is not my expertise. I'm really good at talking to homeowners, carrying through the project, coordinating everything. That's my skill set. The guys who put on the roof, though, they have all my respect, because you're 100% right. Here in Texas, I mean, some days it's 108 degrees on the ground, which means it's like 140 degrees up on the roof because the heat
Wow.
bounces off the shingles.
Yeah.
They're just ripping and running through the jobs. Most of the jobs get finished in a day. Most of the crews I've worked with finish jobs in a day, and that's anywhere from, we could say 1,000 square feet being small. That seems kind of obvious to get done in a day, but I've also seen roofs up to 7,000 square feet get done in a day. So these guys work really hard. They have all my respect in the world.
Wow. Okay. Wow. All right. Excellent. So I like your experience, or I like your perspective on things as well. Like you sold makeup.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, that I would put that feather in your hat. That's a big one. That's something that it's kind of ironic, but if you could go through that, and like you said, that would make any guy uncomfortable. Like, I mean, just to learn about it and everything like that. And I'm sure that kind of set you up for success, down the road. Like, hey, if I can talk about this this stuff right here, selling roofs is a walk in the park. You got that down pretty good.
You actually, it's even funnier than that. So when I sold makeup, I wasn't like a dude at a kiosk either. I worked for a direct marketing company. So I was the dude you catch in the parking lot, like trying to get you perfume and things like that direct kind of thing. So that was, I cut my teeth in sales. So when I was doing that for about, I think it was 3 months before I was like, the money just ain't here. It's not a big enough product. I got to figure.
Wow. So it wasn't just a matter of just like, this is embarrassing as hell and everything else. You're just like, hey, on top of that, there's just not enough markup, or just
so low. There's not enough commission in it, and it really, I could care less what you want me to sell. It's just a matter of like, if you're going to pay me well and I enjoy the culture and the company that I'm with, I'll sell it. I mean, I don't have to necessarily wear the makeup, for example. I like the company I worked with. The people I worked with were great. I was learning a lot. That's always been more important to me in my career, was what am I learning versus what am I making? Except for in this makeup context, it's like I was learning a lot, but it wasn't things that I thought could translate into many other things beyond the sales skill set that I had gotten.
Right.
And I was like, this is not going anywhere. I don't want to spend too much time here. I don't know if you've ever read Rich Dad, Poor Dad or heard of the book, but one of the
of course,
one of the most amazing things that I learned when I was 20 years old while reading that book was you don't take a job for money, you take a job for experience. And that's kind of one of the things that has shaped my career over the last 4 or 5 years, and why I've decided to start Trident is because I felt like there wasn't much more experience I could gain in working for somebody else, that it was just time to start making the mistakes on my own. And like I said in the beginning, betting on me.
Wow. That's cool. That's really cool. I really like that. The only other person that sounds similar to what you're talking about was Tristan Miles. And she did something very, very similar to what you're talking about. And I was just blown away by that, because it's just something you don't hear often. I hear a lot of people in the insurance industry that kind of like what I'd call like fall into it. It's not necessarily something you wanted to do, but it was kind of like, all right, well, my option A didn't work out. So, I guess I'll go into this. And then it works out pretty good for people usually. And they stay in it for a long time. But you actually are more strategic, just like she was. She was like, all right, I want to get experience in this. So I'm going to like get experience in this, and this, kind of learn all these different elements, everything. And then I'm going to move up into it. And you're like, wow, that's awesome. Like you're, just like you said, it's not a matter of working a job for a paycheck at the end of the day. It's working a job for that experience. That knowledge that you're gaining is awesome.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, maybe you give me a little more credit than I deserve, because honestly, I fell into roofing on accident, and I did use that whole experience over money thing for a long. That's one of the things, like when I moved into, say, the leadership positions in my first company that I worked for, I did it at a dramatic pay cut. I was making so much more as a sales.
Wow.
It wasn't even, it was literally, my income went to half in making that switch. But to me, the way I looked at it is, I know how to sell. That was evident by the paychecks. That was evident by the work that was coming in. I was like, I've got this skill. I'm confident in this skill. What I don't know how to do is lead people. What I don't know how to do is teach people. What I don't know how to do is basically coordinate, the jobs, all those things on the back end. So I looked at it and I said, sure, I'm going to make less money, but at this time I was 20, almost 21 when I decided to move into management. I'm looking at it, I'm like, I don't need to make, $130,000 a year plus. I need to make, say, 60 grand to pay my bills and kind of live comfortably. But the skill set that I will learn in this opportunity at this point in my life will be way more valuable than the extra 60 grand this year would be. So I looked at it, weighed out those cons, and that's when I went into the management thing, and it paid off well. I mean, I took a pay cut on my first year, my second year, after showing competency and growing the sales of the company by about 50%. I was then made whole, I would say, for the
Wow.
following year.
So, I
But
mean, having that mindset is amazing. I mean, hats off to you for that, because there's a lot of people that don't see that. I mean, I would probably say, I'm going to walk out on a limb on this one, but I'm going to say there's a mass majority of people, probably, overwhelmingly a majority, that don't think like that. Don't think like the same way you do in that sense. Whereas most people are just kind of working their way up a corporate ladder, right? You're kind of trying to slowly climb up that ladder, and to kind of like take a few steps down the ladder, because of a long-term perspective is different. I mean, that's amazing. So hats off to you on that one.
I have a weird like life thing. I live by just being like 1% better. So I really believe in
Oh, really? You do that as well? I like it.
yeah, I actually have a tattoo on my wrist, like right here.
Oh,
It's just
wow.
1%.
That's
It
cool.
just reminds me to
Yeah.
push myself a little bit every day. But I
Yeah.
look at everything on a compounding table, so to speak. So
Yep.
1 year of results ain't much. But if you do the
Mm-hmm.
same thing year in, out, you start to grow on your growth. And then you just have this compounding effect on where you can get in life. I mean, I'm 23. I run a roofing company. I also own part of a solar company, that's Trident Solar, and we own a charging company, Trident Charging. And I've only been able to put myself in this position because I was willing to do incredibly average things all of the time. It's a
Okay.
matter of doing what you're supposed to do every day. So like I like to use fitness as a great example for this. I have lost 60 or so pounds over the last 2 years.
Wow.
And the biggest thing that came from that was when I started working out, I was 290 something plus pounds, probably maybe almost at 300. That's just the day you didn't want to step on the scale. But it started by just going and like stepping outside and walking around the block and then doing like 10 push-ups. And I did 10 push-ups, eventually became 25, 25 became 50, 50 became 100 a day, and a mile walk. And then eventually, like, I didn't start going to the gym until a year and a half of just walking my block and doing push-ups. And I lost 50 pounds just doing that. And then
Wow.
over the last 8 months, as I've started to go to the gym, I've put on probably like 7 to 8 pounds of muscle, and my
Wow.
BMI has changed. But all of this just came because I don't go to the gym and hit it like crazy hard. Like, I don't want to be misconceived there. I go for like 30 minutes and leave, but I do it every single day. And
Wow.
I think a lot
That's
of like
great.
your professional life is the same way. So when I was learning how to sell, I still to this day, I read 10 pages of a nonfiction book every single day. And what that has become over the last 3 years is I've read and or listened to a total of probably 120 sales business based books. And that just puts me in a better place now to run my business and to lead people. And I think a lot of people they don't understand that just taking a small step every day for a long enough time horizon creates massive results in your life.
I take it you read Atomic Habits. Atomic Habits. Then is
Yeah,
that
yeah,
correct?
yeah. I've read Atomic
Yeah.
Habits. It's funny
That's where that
actually.
1% better comes from. Correct.
It's actually not. So it's
Oh,
kind of
really? Wow. Huh.
so I started this whole thing in my head was I looked at it from math. I used to be like super good at math. That's what I
Wow.
prided myself on. So I understood how exponential growth worked,
Yeah.
and so I looked at it. And I was like, the same thing has to apply to your life. So I started doing this whole like little thing every day, and then I would repeat it to some of my friends. They're like, "Have you read this book? Have you read this book?" I finally did get to it sometime last year in
But
like
you
June.
actually had this before reading the book. That's fascity. That is,
The compounding
that's something.
really helped me, but once I read Atomic Habits, I probably should have started with that when people first recommended it to me, because
Sure.
it is identical to exactly how I think.
Wow. So like exponential growth would be things like just like you're saying, like, okay, so you make this tiny little change and nobody really notices anything. Nobody sees anything until all of a sudden it's built up to where then there's this massive change and everybody's like, wow, what'd you do? What'd you change? And you're like, I just changed a little bit every day. It added
100%.
up. That's fascinating to think about like that. So you actually had it, before reading the book. I love that because I mean, I didn't. I would love to say, yeah, I thought of that. No, I never did. I never actually thought about any of that until reading that book, and then I was like, okay, I understand the concepts of it. It's just kind of like implementing that in a real world environment and can be difficult. Once you understand this and everything like that, then you're like, okay, I need to make little changes and things like that.
I have a
You kind
system.
of, to me, it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Just kind of
Yeah.
like, I wish I was better, but you do make changes. You start setting everything up, and then something comes and kicks you down for whatever reason, and that can kind of regress things a bit. But
Oh,
eventually making improvements.
yeah. Like I could tell you for personal experience, I have a system to help with that real life
Oh
application.
wow.
So
Okay.
I'm also I'm an out of sight, out of mind guy, 100%.
Okay.
Like my fiance hates it because I have like sticky
Wow.
notes on my cabinets to remember what's in them, things like that. And like,
Oh wow. You actually implemented all that. I love
yeah,
that.
I
Okay.
have to. It's the easiest way for me to live. The way
Yeah.
I look at it is, it may look strange when people come to my house, but they don't live here. I do. So I have to make it work for me.
Yeah.
Um, but I also keep a calendar on my fridge, and it's just a standard whiteboard calendar. I fill it out every month, and I have 5 important things that I do every day that I feel are what keep me on track in my life. One of them
Okay.
is I work out every day, and that is very broad because it's meant to be. Some days I will go to the gym. Some days I will walk a mile. The bare minimum is I walk a mile, right?
Okay. And that's just like takes. I see what your point is. That's like, hey, I worked out. I walked a mile. I
Correct.
like
So
it.
I show up. I get in the habit of showing up every day. Then I read 10 pages of nonfiction every day. Sometimes I read a whole chapter. Sometimes I read half a book, but I read 10 pages every day. And that
That's
started
what
at
I mean.
2 years ago, right?
Oh
And then I
wow.
check where my money's at every day. I update a budget every day. I track what I eat. I don't necessarily stick to a diet. I'll be 100% honest, but I do track what I'm eating so I can be aware of where I'm at so that I don't overeat. And I'll be honest, I'll track some days that I eat like 6,000 calories because I decided to have ice cream and cake that day or something like that. But I'm tracking it. That's what's important to me.
Sure. Yeah.
And then I journal every day because I feel like that helps me just stay present in my life to be
Hmm.
notice the things that I'm grateful for, whether it's a hot cup of coffee or, my fiance chose to make breakfast one day or whatever it might be. Just try to stay grateful and present. And then as long as I do those 5 things, I put an X on the calendar, right?
Oh,
But
wow. Okay.
I'm human like everybody else in the world.
Yeah.
It's possible to show up 100% of the time. So all I do is live by another simple rule, which is it's always okay to take one day off, just never 2 in a row, because 2 becomes a week, a month really easily. So I practice
Right.
the 2-day rule, and I keep track of it on my calendar, which is on my fridge in the middle of my house.
Wow. I'm very impressed with that. I really like that. I like to hear that. I've heard this as well, this concept that like, okay, every day, you're kind of voting in a sense, you're voting by your habits. So like, all right, for instance, like you exercising, you're saying like, I'm voting to be that type of person that I want to see down the road. It's a vote. Every action, every decision you make in a sense is a vote. And so whenever you think about things like that, you're constantly casting these votes, and it can be like small little bitty nuanced things that you don't really think make a big difference, but every little one of those little votes adds up over the course of time. I'm sure understand this because this is what you're talking about, but it's fascinating to me, to think about like that. So it's kind of like you're just constantly casting these little votes, and whenever you're saying just like what you said with that, making that X on the calendar, it's not absolutely critical that you make every single day, perfect, but it's a matter of you're voting. And as long as you're voting a majority of those days in that direction, that's where you're going to end up. That's what's going to happen long term. So it really, I really like to think about that. That's great. From a standpoint of self improvement, like, hey, you know what? I want to make myself, whatever that is, be it I want to make more money or I want to be like yourself, be one really fit and get myself in shape. What do you got to do to get there? And what does a fit person do? He works out every day, eats healthy, and so you're constantly casting these votes. There was a book, and I'm probably going to butcher this. It's I'm going to butcher his name. I think the guy's name is Robert Casacchio. I'm probably butchering it, but forgive me for that. He's a behavioral scientist.
Mhm.
And I love this guy for his crazy ass hair and his beard because he looks really, really interesting. And he always works with baboons. And he kind of has that crazy hair anyhow. So he came up with a book recently as well about human behavior. And it's kind of like goes back to what you're talking about with your little sticky notes and everything, because those sticky notes, It's kind of like this in the sense of you're changing your environment. You're not just forcing yourself to change, which I think is kind of like our mindset from the past is like that's always was our changing was to change you, to actually have the willpower to not eat that ice cream or whatever. And your mindset as well as his was something like you need to change your environment.
Hmm.
Totally radically change your environment. Take that ice cream away. I can't see the ice cream. I don't have the ice cream. I'm not going to eat the ice cream. Put an apple there. And if you get hungry and it's convenient to grab the apple, you can eat the apple, because it's right there. I'm definitely 100% subscribed to that as well. I've seen that firsthand in my own experience. Another thing he also talks about is with this new book is he's talking about how our life and everything we do it's predetermined in the sense that he's not saying every action you take is predetermined, but in the sense of who you are is predetermined. So you're just essentially a product of your environment. You're working around where you came from and your upbringing, as well as what you're putting around yourself. So like you're talking about how you change your house and put the sticky notes everywhere. You've changed your environment to improve yourself, and so therefore you have changed yourself. So
Yeah.
that's I'll get off the stool here and let you talk. But
Oh, my,
that
my
was
my greatest example of changing your environment for success, one of the hardest habits I've ever implemented, and I still struggle with it on a daily basis, is waking up at 5 o'clock. And the reason I do
oh
that is
really?
I want to wake up at 5 so I can go to the gym and then have
Okay.
time to like not get, because I mean, I've been in leadership roles for the last 4 years, give or take now. So
Right.
my phone basically from 7 o'clock to like 8 o'clock is always going off with something. There's a fire to put out. There's a problem to solve. There's somebody to
Right.
help. There's always something, right? So I started this about 2 years ago, waking up at 5 so that I had about 2 hours where nobody would bother me.
Yeah, makes sense.
And
You can go
I tried
work out.
so many different things to get consistent with it. And I found that there was one thing that worked every time. And it was
Excellent.
about changing my environment. I had to put my phone outside of my bedroom. I still kept the alarm on, but I kept the phone outside of the bedroom, right
Okay.
outside my kitchen. And then I would put my workout clothes next to the phone. Because by the time I had to get up out of bed, walk to a different room, get hit in the face with light, see my workout clothes, and turn off the phone, it didn't make sense to go back to bed. So
Right.
like
You're not going to go back to bed to that
just those
point.
little things help a lot. And then when you talk
Wow.
about the compound thing, so one thing I really want to do one day is in my future, I'd like to be able to speak and help people, because some of these habits that I've been able to do, and I think they're fairly simple, small life changes you can make that could have huge changes in your life, whether it's how you talk or how you're living, things like that. I'd like to be a public speaker one day in the future. And I post on social media basically every day some sort of content across all of the platforms that we have, minus LinkedIn. That one's just a little bit more difficult to be consistent with every day. But I had my first speaking gig in Atlanta, Georgia in June. And that all just came about because people have seen the content that I put out around sales, or some of the habit forming stuff that I do, or the business stuff with roofing. In fact, with this last one, I did an hour-long speak on how to door knock effectively in our industry. But that opportunity came from 2 years of work I did before that was very small. It was just figuring out something to post on a
Wow.
daily basis. And then that
Wow.
was able to open that door and opportunity up for me. And there's so many things like that in our life that we just overlook.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with that. Just because you get into a habit, be that a good habit or a bad habit, kind of like what you're describing with working out, getting yourself up every day. I'll admit that, like for majority of my life, I never woke up early. Like it was just like, no, I hated waking up early. And I never would do that, especially, like if you're working a different position where you can wake up later, I would always take advantage of that. But then, like I made the decision to change that, to wake up earlier, because kind of like you're describing there as well, you have this opportunity. You wake up early and it's like, hey, I've got this hour, sometimes 2 or 3 hours to really get myself, get my mindset right, go ahead and get a workout in. And that, that helps reduce your stress level, I'm sure, as well. Maybe do a meditation session if you can get that in there as well. And that really helps set up your whole day going forward. So yeah, that's a big one. So now, yeah, I wake up at 4:45 every day and go work out, do all these same types of things, and it really helps set everything else up as well. But I like what you're saying about your 5 different things. Like try to set up like 5 different goals. I haven't done that. I like that. I like that concept of like setting up 5 different things. What's that?
It basically, it sets me up to have some sort of win. So I have 5 different opportunities to win in my day, which helps my confidence, and
Okay.
it just keeps me on path. It's one of those things where I look at my life and I go, okay, well, when I'm older, I want to be able to be mobile. I want to be able to like move around with my kids. I want to be able to be the grandparent one day that can still hang out with the grandkids, things like that. And how would you do that? Well, in order to do that, I have to identify as a person who is healthy. And what would a person who is healthy do? They would try to move their body every day. They would make sure that they don't eat like an asshole every day. Sorry, pardon my French there.
Right,
But
right.
it's
No, I
okay to have
understand.
bad days, but just don't eat that way every day. And same thing with, it's okay to not work out. Just don't do that every day. I think one of the biggest things that I've done that's helped me with some of these positive changes is I'm not trying to institute a habit, so to say. I'm changing who I am. So I identify with a lot of these habits. Like, I'm a healthy person. I'm a person who works out every day. That's a part of me now. So now when I don't work out, I feel like I'm betraying me, because I've put it in my head that I'm the kind of person who works out every day. I'm the kind of person who tracks his food every day. I'm the kind of person who's going to post on social media every day. Like, and if I don't do that, I'm now more accountable to myself to go like, well, were you lazy? Did you really have a reason you couldn't do it? Because, you say that's the kind of person you are. And I find when we identify with the habits that we want, we tend to follow through a lot more. Because if you approach it as, I'm a person who eats bad, so I'm going to try to eat healthier. Well, you've already set yourself up for failure, because when you identify with trying to start a habit that way, you're already setting yourself up for success. It's like when people try to quit smoking and they count how many days they haven't smoked. It's like, well, why are you counting? Are you not going to do it ever again? Because if you identify as a person who doesn't, I'm addicted to nicotine, so I know how hard this one is. But if you identify as a
Okay.
person who doesn't smoke or a person who doesn't use nicotine, why would you count the days you haven't done it? Because now you're just giving yourself I went 30 days. It's okay if I mess up today. Instead, you could look at it as, I'm just a person who doesn't do that. Whether it's been 2 weeks, 2 years, you don't identify with, you identify as somebody who doesn't do it. It helps tremendously, I feel, with especially the harder habits.
Yeah, this kind of goes back to that same type of book, and the same type of mindset is like try to identify, because whether we realize it or not, like our identity dictates everything else that we are. Some people really identify with their jobs. They identify with all kinds of different things, and it's really, you're absolutely correct. It's like all these things make up who you are. It's not just a matter of one thing. It's a matter of all these different elements and different things. It's like you just described there. I'm a healthy person. I'm a healthy person. I'm a person that eats healthy. And then you kind of reverse engineer that, like saying like, all right, well, what does a healthy person eat? And then you build everything up around that, instead of like you're saying about the smoking. I'm a non-smoker. So whenever you identify like that and say that, then you start building everything around it. A non-smoker is not going to smoke,
And
and
you
so
might
you start.
before it's true. That's one of the funniest things to me is so in my journal, I write every day, and I write those 5 affirmations basically. Like, I write, I am a billionaire, I am a real estate investor, writing as a $50 million company, I work out every day, I'm writing every day, I'm reading every day.
Wow.
Those are things that I write every day in my journal and have for the last 3 years. But one of the big things about that is I was writing, I am working out every day, long before I was working out every day. I was writing, I am
I like
reading
it.
every day, long before I was reading every day, because I was trying to just get my subconscious mind to
Yeah.
adopt that as who we are. And I think
Yeah.
you have to live in a little bit of a delusion and root for yourself when you're trying to start hard habits.
Yeah. That's fascinating. I really like to hear that, because, people have to get started somewhere. It's kind of like calling yourself a non-smoker while you're actively smoking. It's kind of a bit asinine. You're like, wait a minute, I'm being a hypocrite here. I'm actually smoking right now. While I'm writing down, I'm a non-smoker. But, that same concept really helps people out, I'm sure, because what are you going to show me?
Yeah,
Is this your 5 things?
this is my journal. So I journal for half the page while my book's up, but then I write, 1 to 3 things that I'm grateful for until I run out of a page. I just try to write things that I'm grateful for as well, because I think sometimes we take advantage of the fact that we live such grand lives here. Like, having a
Yeah.
hot coffee in the morning, you should be
Yeah.
grateful for that. Not everybody gets
Yeah.
it. Having a
Very
warm
true.
bed, so I try to make sure that I'm very aware of the gifts that I do have in my life, so that I
Yeah.
can't fall prey to this like comparison monster that everybody's.
No, that's you said it right there. I definitely agree with that myself. 100% is, and I think it's easy to do. I don't necessarily blame people for doing that because it's easy to do. It's real easy to kind of get in this mindset with having everything you have, and just kind of ironically, people are more stressed, depressed, everything else now than when people were poor and broke. And I mean, I've been to a lot of different countries. I've been to some very poor countries, and I have seen how the rest of the world, as I call it, lives the real world. This is not the real world. That's the real world.
It's
You want to
crazy.
go and see what they really live like, and it's like, man, that is it's crazy, to see things like that. And I've been some bad situations, some real austere, and I want to say this cautiously because there's some people who've seen much, much worse than I've ever been into. But I've been to Afghanistan, Iraq, a lot of other countries, places like that. And you know what? I mean, whenever I was living in some of the worst conditions, I was happiest. It sounds crazy, but I was living in a tent, and we had the whole place got flooded in Afghanistan, and so we took a shower in water. We were standing in mud water, taking a shower. It's like, this doesn't make any sense, we're taking a shower
I
in the
can
mud.
that because
But
I've been fortunate to do a little bit of traveling. Like I've been to certain spots in Mexico. I've been to like Jamaica, the
okay,
resorty
yeah,
type things. But when you go off
yeah,
of the resort and you get to see how everybody in this
right,
country is actually living, like one of the
yeah,
most heartbreaking things I ever saw was when I was in Jamaica. I mean, I could see children that
yeah,
were malnourished, and
yeah,
when that's like burned into my head. So when I think about when I was in some tough times, let's say, trying to figure out this whole sales thing, because it's sink or
yeah.
swim when you go into that kind of career. So in the beginning, I obviously wasn't very good, didn't make very much money. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, I got to eat ramen for dinner again. Here we go. But just to check yourself and be like, well, at
Yeah,
least I get this, because there's people
yeah,
in the world who don't even have that. They're going to bed and having sleep for dinner. And that's a very
yeah.
uncomfortable place to be in life. And so it was actually when I started doing the whole I'm grateful for and then just filling out the page, was because I was comparing myself to other sales reps who were doing better than me. I was comparing myself to leaders that are better leaders than me. I'm comparing myself to people who are better at social media than me, better at podcasting than me, whatever it is. I was in this like comparison problem, and I was like, I'm doing good for me. Like, what? I got everything
Right,
I need. Why, why
right.
am I doing this to myself? Why am I making myself miserable by trying to look at the things I don't have instead of making myself happy by realizing the things that I do have? And by just writing those I'm grateful for statements every day and trying to look for something, because I know I have to write it every day. So I'm always looking for things to be grateful for in that day, because I try not to repeat myself too much, because it's could be really easy for me to say I'm glad for my hot cup of coffee every morning, but I try to look for something different every day, uh,
Okay.
so that I can just be aware of how good I truly have it. And then
Yeah,
it obviously makes the work a lot easier, because business ownership's not easy.
yeah,
And being in sales roles isn't easy. Being a parent isn't easy. I'm not a parent, but there's plenty of people that listen to this probably are.
right.
Uh, there's a lot of hard things we have to do in our life, and I think taking a moment to check ourselves and be thankful for the things we have will generally make you more happy and generally make the work and of the things you're doing a lot easier.
Definitely agree with that. Yeah, 100% agree with that. I mean, that's and I think it's easy to do, I mean, if you look at it from we're all just humans at the end of the day. And so we kind of get into this trap, of and social media is a lot to blame with it, and they need to be held accountable. Someday they might. It's unlikely right now, but they should really be held accountable for what they're doing in a lot of different instances. But yeah, I definitely think that we're all humans at the end of the day. And so it's really, really easy to get into a trap in the sense of like, you know what, you're whenever you do upgrade yourself, so to speak, and you're living in that nice house and everything like that, it's real easy to get just kind of complacent with that, and it just becomes normal. And then you see your neighbor who's got a bigger car and a bigger house, whatever that is. It doesn't necessarily matter if it's the house, if it's the car, if it's and most people, I think, are comparing themselves to someone else on social media who's faking what they've got. It's not even a matter of that they're actually real. It's fake. They're not even really that rich. That's fake. I know how they're doing that. And so, yeah, I think that we're all kind of set up for that failure in a sense of, and then that caused a lot of other problems. A lot of people get really upset because of what they're trying to compare their life to. And you're like, like you said, it's a matter of you were doing really good, but then you're trying to compare yourself to somebody who's got, probably 20% or whatever, X number more than you. And you're like, I'm a loser. I don't have that. I really wish I was a little bit better. We're all like that. We all, I'm always trying to up my skill set and make myself a little bit better and improve my skills. And then I see these people who are obviously professionals. They know what they're doing. They do this kind of stuff every single day, and they can walk through what it takes me days to do in a matter of minutes, like it's a joke. And, you get really discouraged by that. But, it's kind of like you're saying, you need to improve yourself little by little, every single day, and stop thinking about as much as we possibly can, stop thinking about other people and comparing ourselves to the 1% or less that are actually doing, because they really are. These are 1% that are actually doing better than you, instead of the 99% of the rest of the human population that is doing much, much worse than you are. This is
could just take a step back and realize that most average Americans live in the top 1% of the world population.
Of the world. Yeah.
And I think we often forget that. And, I could tell you that if I was to say I don't compare myself to others, that would be a lie. Simply put, right. I compare myself to others because that is a way to get better. But it's also, you just have to understand where you're at on these things. If I look at a company that's doing better than mine, I'm going to compare my company to that company, but I'm doing it so that I can figure out what they're doing that I'm not, so I can make the necessary adjustments to get better, right? Yeah. But you have to look at comparison through that light, not the comparison on social media where you're comparing your personal life to John's personal life. When you look at social media, you're looking at snapshots of 1% of their life that they're choosing to show you. That's the part that they're happy about, they're bragging about, that they're willing to put out in the public eye, right? And I think a lot of people forget that if you look at the average person's social media, they're posting, less than once a week. So if you're posting less than once a week, what do you think's getting posted? It's the highlights, man. You can't compare it.
Sometimes it's even completely fake too. I know that they can do that. They can get cars and everything else that they rent, or if it's even more fake than that, they've got private aircraft that are don't even have wings on them. They just go and they sit inside and they take all these pictures, and then it's all fake. It's all fake. I don't think everyone is fake on social media by any means, but there's a lot of it that's fake. It's dramatized, it's glamorized. They put all these filters on it and everything like that. Real life is not like that. Real life is kind of like, I have one day that's good, one day that's bad. It's kind of in the middle. There's another one it made me think of whenever you're saying all this. I'm going to butcher this again, so please don't hold this against me. It's Hans Rosling. He did a podcast. He didn't do I think he did a TED Talk. And he did this so many years ago. And this was in Sweden. And he asked his audience in Sweden, what do you think a middle-class bedroom looks like? And what do you think a middle-class, a house and everything like that? And they do what we do, and he was talking about the world population at large. What do you think this is like? And, I can't blame the Swedes for doing this, but they showed a normal bedroom, what we think of as normal. Middle class is what he was going after. Mm-hmm. Man, he showed what a real middle class is for the average, for the world population. And you're just like, wow. I mean, it's just literally mud floors, with the not even a cot, just they sleep on the floor and have some blankets down. You're talking about a middle-class bathroom. You're thinking what I'm probably thinking. And it's like an outhouse, a hole in the ground. And that is the real middle class. It's not what we live in. We live in the top 1%. And, so we have a totally different skewed sense of comparison. What are we thinking a middle-class person does with this? No, we made this up. This is not reality. This is a made-up reality that's been glamorized by social media. It's not the real world that's out there.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's just perspective, and that's one of the big reasons why I journal. Because on the surface, I look at journaling, it's not really helping with major things. And what I realized over the last 3 years of doing it is it's a reality check. It makes you look at your life, because if you have to think of half a page to write every day, you're kind of downloading that day. You're thinking about what really happened. You're going to catch things that you maybe wouldn't have thought about had you not forced yourself to sit down at the end of the day and write about something that happened that day. You could just go to bed, and whatever lesson you could have learned from that day is now gone. And so
Right.
it for me, the journaling every day, the reason I've stuck with it so long is just it keeps me present, keeps me aware, helps me catch lessons that I probably wouldn't have caught otherwise. And honestly, I've gotten to know myself better and the way that I think in trying to capture these days on pages.
That's great. Yeah. And another thing as well is just like you're saying, you capture kind of like what your train of thought is that day as well. And I'm sure, you have days that you're just like really worried about something or anxious about something, whatever it is, little things that like you can, like you said, at the end of the day, you write all these things down. And then later, at least from my experience as well, you forget all about it. You have no idea. And then it's really cool to be able to look back, like, let's say 3 months ago when let's say before you got a big job or something like that. And it was your first commercial job, just trying to make something up. And you were really nervous about it at the time before you started it. And then you forgot all about that later. Like you're doing 10 or 12 of these a day or whatever a month, and you forget all about it. And then you can rewind yourself back to the first one. You're like, wow, I was nervous, before I started this. It kind of helps give you a sense of reflection, I think, as well. Like kind of tracking where you came from, your mindset as well, things that make you, for obvious reasons, nervous, different things like that. So it's a really good record keeping for yourself, and it kind of gives you a frame of reference where everything came from with yourself.
Well, one of the biggest things that I would say that I benefit from by journaling at night is, you kind of touched on it. You might be anxious or worried about something all day, right? And sometimes I kick myself for this, but I'll write at the end of the day, I'll write down kind of this thought that I've had all day or this thing that I've been worried at. And what it does is it almost separates you from the idea when it's on the paper.
Oh, yeah.
You look at it and go, I can't solve this problem. There's nothing I can do about it except for say, wait, or you look at it and you go, oh, I can solve this problem by doing this. And it removes you from being a part of that problem in your head. Once it's on the paper, It's easier to either solve and move forward or realize that you can't do anything about it and just move forward. And it's been a really good, like, I don't even know who told me to start writing, to be honest with you. I thought it would be important. So I just started journaling, and that has been one of the greatest assets from it, that being present and the grateful thing. Because I was just originally writing my goals, and that's when I transferred. I was like, if I'm writing my goals every day, I'm picking a piece of paper, I might as well like write down what's going on that day, see what's going on, have a record of it. It'd be cool to look back on. That was my thoughts in the beginning. And then it just turned out to be this incredibly useful tool for just my own like mental health and staying on course, and recognizing lessons that should be learned that maybe I would have missed otherwise.
Wow. Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. I definitely like all of that. It's all these different things like that. Another thing I was going to mention, you probably already know this, but it helps your sleep as well. Because, a lot of people lay down at the end of the night and you got all these thoughts racing through your head. And then you're kind of like, it's kind of like you said, like you can't stop thinking about things, and you're trying to. But if you write it down, it's kind of like, all right, now I've got a record of this. And it's, in a sense, it's letting it go. You've written it down on paper. You can deal with it the next day, or sometimes it takes longer than that. Sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. Yeah. But if you've written it down, then it's down there. It's funny. It's like really odd because you think like that doesn't make any difference. It does. It really helps you out. It helps improve your sleep as well, just because you're kind of releasing that information. So I definitely I've experienced that myself as well. So I definitely applaud that. I think it's a great thing to do.
Yeah, and sleeping thing. I mean, it's funny. The writing definitely helps, but since I instituted this whole like board, I call it my accountability board.
Okay.
But since I've instituted my accountability board, it's very difficult for me to tell myself it's time to go to bed if I know I haven't done everything on that list. I will tell you that there are days that I absolutely don't want to do any workouts. I don't want to read. I don't want to write. I don't want to open up my spreadsheet and update all my budget stuff and things like that. Days, that's resistance. Like every person is going to face it. And I always tell people, your life is dictated on who you are when resistance hits. Are you going to push through it and keep putting votes, as you said earlier, to that person, or are you going to lay down? And I think a lot of people's progress in life comes to the point where they just decide that they're done putting votes towards that direction because it's hard. And I'll tell you, there's days that I've went for 2-mile runs at 11 o'clock because I took the day off before and I knew I couldn't take the next day off because it would have broken.
Like David Goggins here. Damn, that's impressive.
2 miles. When I say run, like I don't run very fast. I'm very slow, dude. Big dude.
Yeah.
I'm talking like 15-minute miles here. Like,
okay.
Like
nonetheless, that's his same concept. That's his same, I believe, David Goggins' his same, outlook on everything. Like he's been known to like run at 3 o'clock in the morning. He's got the same mindset, like he didn't care what he was going to get his run, whether it was snowing outside, raining. He was like, you got to push even when you're down. So that's impressive.
Reps, they used to give me so much crap because we'd end a meeting and I'd have like 10 minutes between and they'd like hop on their phones. They see me pull out a book. I'm like, I got to do this now. I don't have time in the rest of my schedule for the rest of the day. I'll start slamming pages down, or I'll start journaling in between meetings so that I can get that done for the day. Or,
oh, wow.
The whole, roofing, a lot of our days can start at 7 o'clock, if not earlier. So like picking up at 5 o'clock to make sure I'm in the gym for at least 30 minutes, being able to carve that out and then go work all day out in the sun. Cause I may not put the roofs on, but I've got to inspect roofs. I'm up there for 30, 45 minutes, walking around, chalking stuff up, taking photos. I've got to, canvas doors occasionally, knock doors. So it's hot out there doing that. Most of the job is done outside, whether I'm installing it or not. So you go work out in the morning, then you go work outside in the heat all day, and then you come home, and you sit down, and you do all your paperwork. And then, for me, I'm going to journal, I'm going to read still. And then I have to make time to hang out with my fiance and all of these things. But I will say that by putting this stress on me and this workload on me, because they're all things that I want for me, ultimately, the working out, the healthy mind, all those good things, they're things I want for me. I've realized one really good thing, and that's I'm happier than 90% of people I meet simply because I know how all my days are going to go. I know that I'm going to wake up the same way. I'm going to work out and start my day the same way. My work day may fluctuate and change every day, but I have so much structure, and it's not fun to follow all the time, but it makes my life so peaceful and happy because I know exactly what's going on. Like I know how all my days start, how all my days will end. I may not know the middle part, but knowing how your days start and end every day, I'm very peaceful, very happy dude. Just kind of wander through life. And I find that, it's a Jocko Willink, I believe, is who said this, but discipline equals freedom. I found that by being more disciplined, I am generally more happy. Because like, let's say Sunday, for example. On Sundays, I don't take those days off. I still work out if I have to work out that day. I'm still going to write. I'm still going to read, do all those things. I may do them all before noon. And guess what? I've won the day. I have done the 5 things I have to do to make myself better in the future. I can mess around the rest of the day and I don't feel any kind of guilty of it because I've taken care of what I have to do that day. And that's every single day. So when I decide to not, be my best self and eat the $1,000 or 1,000 calorie brownie sundae at Andy's, one of my favorite ice cream joints. I love ice cream. But I do that. I don't feel bad because I know I've done everything I was supposed to do. Or when I decide to, I don't go out very often. That's not really my thing, but maybe once every 6 months, I'll go out with my brothers or my friends, get out of the house. And I don't feel bad for going and doing that because I've probably done all my stuff before doing that I'm able to relax and not feel bad about it because I know that I have done what I was supposed to do to be the best version of me in the future. Could I have not done this and still been better? Sure. But you also have to live life. And then the added benefit is doing this for the last 3 years is in the beginning, when you start the accountability board, you don't have a lot to back up on. It's just your word. You're just trying to stay consistent. 3 years later, I've got pictures of the board for every month that I've done it, right? So I can see every day I've taken off. I think in last year, I took 52 days off all across the whole year, right?
Wow. That's impressive.
That year after year, you've stacked this evidence to believe that that's who you are. So when the hard days come, you can go, well, you were able to do it all those other times. You can do it now.
Right,
and it helps solidify that identity that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
That I am a healthy person because I think Alex Hormozy said something like this, like you don't become confident by screaming affirmations in the mirror. You do it by stacking evidence. That's me stacking my evidence for me. It's not for anybody else. Nobody else sees the board, just me and the people that live in my house. Like they get to see it, but that's it. It's just to know that I'm doing what I said I was going to do.
Excellent, man. I'm very impressed. This is not at all what I was expecting during this call. But I say this, and I knock on wood, I have learned something new every person I talk to. Whether it's the same, like if it's 5 roofing people, you think like after the fourth one, you're like, you know what, I know everything there is about roofing. What else am I going to learn? There's something else you do not know. Believe me. And this conversation went totally different than what I was expecting, but I love it. I love it. I mean, I want to have you on again in the future if you don't mind. We can actually talk about roofing.
Yeah,
Let's talk about actual roofing next time and your company a little bit more. But this has been great. Hell, you've encouraged me. Like I really appreciate that. To try to, just nothing more than just improve your life. Like, hey, what do you really want to be like? What do you kind of see yourself going towards? What are your goals? Because everyone of us has that. We all have like these goals, and a lot of us probably as well are ashamed of ourselves in some form or another. You're like, if I just had this 6-pack or whatever, something like that, or X number of dollars, then I would be set, and I'd have confidence then. But until then, I'm a loser. We're all like that, to some extent or another. So,
yeah, it's all.
definitely. What's that?
No, I'd love to hop on and we can talk about roofing next time. I mean, I did. I went on a tangent there, but
I love it. I love it. I appreciate it. I thank you for that. Honestly, like you did great. I'm very impressed. I hopefully we can use this on TikTok and other sites, so that people can see, some of your things. Because I know all this has been said. You didn't say anything new that I didn't know that other people don't know.
yeah, of course.
But I think it's good to hear, and I think it's good to have these types of things to try to improve your life.
I think the one thing, one of the reasons I'm so passionate and why I'm very vocal about some of these things that I do is because I'm just a regular dude. Like we hear all of this
like
from
that.
millionaires, the billionaires. I'm just a regular
Right.
dude. These are the things that I do to make my life happier, that made my life better. And I think a lot of people look at it as this ginormous mountain when they look at
Yeah.
self-development sometimes, especially when it's coming from certain people. Like, if Grant Cardone tells you to work your ass off, it's like, okay, sure, $1 billion dude. If
Right.
Ed Milet tells you to do like one more on everything, it's like, sure, you make $500 million a year. That's easy for you.
Right.
It's very easy
Yeah.
to break these things off that these people say. And it also sounds very corny, almost as if it wouldn't be real. Like it can't be that easy.
Yeah.
It is that easy. You just have to show up and do the small things.
I like what you're saying, in the sense of it is that easy as long as you're looking at like 1% improvement. 1% is nothing. And that's like, all right, instead of reading 10 pages, I didn't get 10 pages. I got 1 page. Or open the damn book. I just opened the book. Just
Yeah.
get the book, open it. That's step one, and you did that. Then, little by little over the course of time. And like you said, for a long time, you were just writing it down.
Yeah. For a long
I love
time.
that. I love to hear that. That's cool. I've never heard anybody actually say that. Like they just write it down. I'm working out, even though you're not actually working out.
It was not. And I tell people all the time, like when I commit to my next goal, I start writing it down. And I'm gonna start like in the beginning when you commit to any goal, it's hard. It's always going to be hard. But I'm living in this weird, I call it living in a delusion. But I live in a delusion where I can achieve just about everything I decide I'm going to do. It's going to be hard, but it's a matter of just making myself become that person who can do those things. It's I wasn't a great salesman when I started. I learned how to do this by reading and becoming I identify as a good sales rep. Are there people better than me? I'm certain of it. I live in a delusion. I'm the best. You know why? Because that gives me the confidence to keep trying every single day. And it's one of those things that I think hearing it from a normal person sometimes makes people harder. And I've talk about it because it's helped my sales reps. And that was one of the most rewarding parts and why I wanted to start a company is because training people and leading people and being able to help them not only in their professional life, but through communication, become better husbands, sons, with some of the females, mothers, brothers, whatever your role is in life. I teach people how to be better communicators, not the best sales reps. Because if you're a great communicator, you become a great sales rep. And it's the same thing when I started all of this because I felt as a 20-year-old, I could not lead people if I wasn't willing to live that kind of life and try to be exceptional in some of these spots. I didn't feel like I had earned the respect of my peers to be their leader. And in doing that and living by example, I've been able to touch other people's lives and see them get better. And it's just made me have this hunger to keep pushing it and express these beliefs and tell people like, it's really just a matter of putting your goals on a long enough time horizon. We grossly overestimate what we can accomplish a year, and grossly underestimate what we can accomplish in a decade.
100% agree. I'm very impressed. I'd love to have you on again in the future. We'll just schedule it out whenever you've got some time. But I'm very impressed with you, and thank you so much for sharing everything with me today.
Of course, man. I'd love to be on again. We'll get something scheduled.
Okay, excellent. You have a good one.